Hi, this is Eileen Nicole, and we're going to be talking about some news today. I was just wanted to talk about this saga that we're going to be um, looking into or following, which is with Donald Trump and well, his new presidency. And we're going to be following this and uh, trying to figure things out because he's openly attacking the whole proletariat unless you're a white man. He is attacking white women, really children. He's got a whole war against black people. He's got a whole infantry war against um, Mexicans, Latin people. He's just really kind of like in his tyrant mode right now. So I just kind of wanted to kind of go over some of the stuff that he has already been doing. And I just wanted to let's take a look at some videos of Trump, and this is him at the press conference today. He gave a press conference about there was a crash in Washington D.C. where a total of so far 67 people were accounted for. They haven't recovered all the bodies, but they know that there should be 67 people. There should have between the two aircraft that should have been on the plane, that should have been, you know, available in the plane. Anyway, the point is that this was a disaster. The crashes over DC. The plane fell in the water. Both of the planes fell in the water, and in the aftermath of that, instead of like mourning and helping and being a leader and you know being there for the people who have lost their loved ones, this is what Donald Trump is doing. So let's go ahead and take a look at the video. Oh, no. Okay, wrong one. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay, I believe this is it. No. Here we go. All right, so let me just share my screen here and let's get into this. Hold on.
Entering office, I signed something last week that was an executive order, very powerful, on restoring the highest standards of air traffic controllers and others, by the way. Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented.
And so when he
talented.
says they have to be intellectual, they have to be talented, the subtext there is that the people there are dumb, stupid, they don't know what they're doing. They're only there because they're black or other, and the only people that can do the job are white men who are all white men are smart, which this is really what he wants to say, but he can't say it. So he finds ways in other words, wordplay to try to figure out how to say it.
Geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel.
He's such a coward. He can't even look up. He can't even look up and say it because he's a coward. But let's continue.
Point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes
You know,
focus on
before I move on, there were a bunch of people in my community, in the Black community, that would say, Trump is not a racist. Trump is not a racist. He just says stuff. He just says stuff. Well, now he's just doing stuff. He's just doing stuff. Where are those people? Those people are riding his coattails still. But let's continue.
hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so.
You know what's so interesting about this? Okay, so I've had all kinds of jobs, regular jobs, second jobs, third jobs, you know, just having jobs. And I remember working in this warehouse before. And this warehouse was uh, basically it was part of the federal government. So you couldn't do certain things at this warehouse, at this place that I worked at. And there would be special needs people that came in. Now, let me tell you something. The special needs people that came in had a specific job. They came in there, they did it. It was very methodical. It was very like it was very simple, the job that they had to do. Very, very simple. They came in, they did it every time. They were very happy to be able to do it. And it really didn't affect any other part of the business or the company. It was just, it was part of a program. And they brought these people who were, you could tell that they had mental disabilities. Anyway, they were so nice. I mean, like, I would always talk to them. And they were just cool. They were just cool. They come in and they do their job. And it was a very, it wasn't like it was this, like if they didn't do the job or if they didn't show up, it would stop anything in the warehouse. That wasn't the type of job they had. It was very simple. It was very plain. And they liked to do it. It wasn't it wasn't overexerting themselves. They weren't given this uber complicated job. So, and again, this was a company that I got this second job at that did they were part of the federal government. They were federal government. So I know that they have they carve out specific things for people to do that really doesn't have it make or break the business. So for him to be sitting here saying this, let's continue.
Oh, that was
He wouldn't know about these things because he does for one, he wouldn't dare actually visit any of these places unless it was benefiting him in some way, like he was on the campaign trail or getting some money out of it. He wouldn't do it. And then two, he thinks he's above all of us. He thinks he's above all of us. This is our president that thinks he's better than everybody else. A president, a leader, is supposed to be someone that is of service to their people.
a week before I entered office, they put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened because of the stress.
Now, when he said that, there is a statistic about Black people. Let me see if I can find it. So when I asked Google, let me just share this really quick. You guys see that? Okay, it says what group of people live less because of stress? People with low incomes and racial or ethnic minorities are more likely to experience stress, which can lead to poorer health and shorter life expectancy. Okay. Let me see if this is going to work out. Acting funny. All right. So let's see. It says the Commonwealth Minority Health Survey provides a unique glimpse of racial and ethnic variations in stress. So on a global measure combining exposure to stressors in 5 domains: occupation, finances, relationships, racial bias, and violence, Blacks, Hispanics, and Asians reported higher levels of stress than whites. Among Hispanics, Puerto Ricans had the highest levels of stress. Interestingly, there was dramatic variation among the Asian subgroups included. Chinese reported higher levels of stress than any other group in the study. Vietnamese were intermediate, and Koreans reported the lowest levels of in the study. Reaction to stressors may also differ across groups. Blacks, especially those at the low end of the economic spectrum, report not only a great number of stressful life events, but also stronger responses to them, or greater distress than whites in a variety of domains. In some studies, though, not all minorities, especially Blacks, react with greater psychological distress than whites to unpleasant events. Differences in exposure to stress are partly attributed to group differences in socioeconomic status. However, race may also interact with socioeconomic status in producing levels of distress. So this report is coming from the National Library of Medicine. So they did this, they did this study. This is what they found. So when he says, let's run back.
Actually shorten
Let's
very
run back.
substantially people that the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened, because of this, where you have many planes coming into one target.
So, in other words, the subtext is he's strongly talking about Black people and also other minorities, but in particular Black people, because we live, when he's bringing up the stress and the life expectancy of a person under stress in a socioeconomic class that is lower. And a lot of people that work for the airline, like when I had that second job, it was a union job, but it still didn't pay a lot of work. It just still didn't pay much. I had to have a second job, so it still didn't pay a lot of money. But anyway, let's just continue here.
You need a very special talent and very special genius to be able to do it. Targeted.
He's speaking about class here. He's talking about class. The classes. He's saying high class people need to be working in the White House and for the federal government. And not only high class people or people in a different social economic category, but people that are loyal to him that are also in high class. So it's not just high class, it's also another multiplier. They have to be loyal to Trump. So basically, you have to worship this man. It's so weird. He thinks he's like Xerxes, king or something. I don't understand how we're here in this country, but we are. And so we have to pay attention to what's happening, and we have to respond. Let's go.
Abilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring, the FAA's website states. They include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity.
But see, he has not confirmed who was there doing, and this had nothing to do. He doesn't even know if this had anything to do with the air traffic controllers. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know if they had anything to do with the pilots, the air traffic controller, the operators. He has no clue. He's just speaking out of his mouth. So let's continue over here, because he's just going to continue to say, you know, Black people are the reason why this happened, and not just Black people, but people with disabilities, other DEI, and believe it or not, white women are part of the DEI. Diversity, it would white women would be classified as a diverse group. Okay, let's look at this news conference. This is the same one, but this is when the reporters are talking. And so this is, let's go.
Office, they put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program.
Are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been.
And yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control, and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane, you think that's going to make a difference?
She read him his rights, okay?
They are a group of people that have lost their lives, but I think that's not a very smart question.
See, what's even more infuriating is headlines like this. They're not helpful because he didn't imply anything. He and his MAGA contingent set out just 24 hours after lambasting anyone who dare brought up the fact that Trump gutted key aviation safety advisory committee while firing the heads of the TSA and Coast Guard, decided that they just blame Black people. Yeah. That's it. So just say it how it is.
Office, they put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target.
Something the president said that I think bears re-emphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think—
And good for Caitlin Collins, not sitting idly by as he spews such unsubstantiated vitriol.
And yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control, and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane, you think that's going to make a difference? They are a group of people that have lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you.
After the horrific crash at the Reagan National Airport, President Donald Trump began his White House briefing Thursday and continued it into the Oval Office the way that you'd envision a Christian who spent last week lambasting a bishop for asking him to show mercy would do, with a moment of silence and prayer for victims, swiftly followed by a rant against diversity, hiring, and his allegation, without evidence, by the way, that lowered standards were to blame for the crash. Trump jumped at the helicopter's pilot, air traffic control, his predecessor, Joe Biden, and other Democrats, including Obama and former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
64 people lost their lives last night. If you aren't confident that DEI had any role, why bring it up?
Well, all I'm talking about is competence. And we want in that particular position, we have to have the most competent people in our country because we're talking about lives. Now, it may or may not have had to do, but I don't like the fact that the helicopter was at the exact same level as the airplane. The helicopter should have been 1,000 feet or 500 feet above it or something below it. The plane was at 300 to 400 feet, or the plane should have been stopped because the helicopter could have stopped. The plane can't be stopped, but the plane was on a schedule that was, it was along a track. They call it a track. And it's the same track. Talking about that, we're talking, but air traffic controllers, maybe in particular, they have to be brilliant with computers, brilliant with graphics. They have to be psychologically really, really smart. And there are a lot of people that wouldn't be able to do that. Sir, thank you.
Second, for your signature, we have a presidential memorandum titled Immediate Assessment of Aviation Safety. In light of the damage done to aviation safety by the Biden administration's DEI and woke policies, what this presidential memorandum orders is for your Secretary of Transportation and FAA administrator, in this case, acting FAA administrator, to basically ensure that we are actively undoing all of that damage, that we are assessing how much damage was done, and that we're ensuring that people hired within the FAA, in keeping with your memorandum of January 21st, are only the most outstanding, capable people for the jobs that they're being hired into.
In other words, competence.
Yes, sir. Elevating competence over everything.
And in response to their fearless leader's remarks, they were bad when even Senate Republicans are shying away from backing his claims. Some just Steve Daines similarly pointed to the NTSB when asked to weigh in on Trump's latest comment, saying, "This is pretty fresh. They haven't even released the names of those who tragically perished, and I'm confident that the NTSB will do a complete, thorough investigation and we'll see what the recommendations are." Right, because no one knows what caused last night's tragic crash outside DCA. Investigations are ongoing, and no one, especially the leader at this moment, should be drawing conclusions until all the facts have been released.
I just watched some of Donald Trump's press conference about the tragedy last night, and it was disgusting.
Yeah.
It was disgusting. First of all, our hearts go out to the victims' families.
Yeah.
And you are putting the nation's safety in
Yeah.
jeopardy.
Yeah.
Or that non-white men caused this crash is unconscionable. We need to get to the bottom of what happened. Nobody's going to know today what caused that crash. But what we absolutely know is that it is not women working at the FAA that caused that crash. What we definitely know, it is not Black employees at the FAA that caused that crash. There are some true things. President Trump forced out of office the administrator of the FAA. He's been waging a regular assault on public employees since he came into office. He forced the entire Aviation Security Review Board, advisory board, to step down. We don't know whether those things had anything to do with this crash, but we should take the time to get to the facts.
But here's the thing. He doesn't want, if any of his choices had anything to do with this crash, he's putting it out there now that he didn't have anything to do with it. It's DEI, it's everything else that had to do with this crash. Anybody other than him is the reason why this crash happened, especially Black people.
And everybody in this country should be outraged that Donald Trump is standing up on that podium lying to you, deliberately lying to you about what the cause was, and further using the White House as a means to try to divide us from each other. That performance was disgraceful, and every single senator and member of Congress should call that for.
Yes.
Here's what I do know. Nothing than him, one, firing the head of the TSA and the Aviation Security Advisory Committee, two, freezing hiring of all air traffic controllers, and three, firing 100 top AA security officers, then blaming Black people for his own incompetence as a leader.
On DEI and the claims made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that. We're going to see. But certainly.
All right. So we're going to look at what, President Barack Obama put here. He said, "Our hearts break for the families who lost loved ones in the tragic plane and helicopter crash at DCA. Michelle and I send our prayers and condolences to everyone who is mourning today, and we're grateful for the first responders who are doing everything they can to help under extremely difficult circumstances." And some of the comments are, well, now that Joe and Barack have weighed in on this, I'm positive it was a false flag or an intentional hit. What? Joe and Jill are praying for whom? Barack and whoever we represent. Wow. This is a disgusting comment. Very, very disgusting. But someone said this is what a real president sounds like. Oh, how I miss having a leader with class and humility. Your heart can't break. You neither care about this country or its citizens or have a heart. Amen. This is how presidents act. Donald Trump does not have the emotional to be president. Because of his ineptitude, we wouldn't have had this crash. He not fired officially. And that right there is it right there. He doesn't want to take the blame for it because he doesn't want to be as actually, at fault. This is what Buttigieg said. He said, despicable. As families grieve, Trump should be leading, not lying. We put safety first, drove down close calls, fatalities out of millions of flights on our watch. President Trump now oversees the military and the FAA. One of his first acts was to fire and suspend some of the key personnel who helped keep our skies safe. Time for the president to show actual leadership and explain what he will do to prevent this from happening again. Well, we know he's not going to do that, so let's move on. So that's the end of that. Basically, it's Donald Trump. He really does have a war on Black people in this country. And he has a war against the Latin people as well. Anybody that's not a white man, because when he first came out, he said that that white men are under attack. He said this. That's what he said. But let's take a look at Democracy Now! Because they did a report on just kind of more in depth about the plane crash and how Congress ignored the warning. So let's take a look, because this could be maybe some of the reason why it happened. So let's take a look.
River after an American Airlines flight and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter collided mid-air late Wednesday, with both aircraft crashing into the water. Officials say there are likely no survivors. At least 30 bodies have been pulled from the river. American Airlines Flight 5342 had 60 passengers and 4 crew members on board and was en route to the D.C. area Reagan National Airport from Wichita, Kansas. The Black Hawk helicopter had 3 soldiers on board conducting a training flight. The National Transportation Safety Board will investigate with the Federal Aviation Administration.
The crash comes just days after the head of the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, Mike Whitaker, stepped down. FAA administrators usually serve 5-year terms. Trump has not named a replacement. Whitaker announced his planned departure in December after SpaceX CEO, Trump donor, richest man in the world, Elon Musk, repeatedly attacked him on social media, tweeting he needs to resign. Musk was responding to $600,000 in FAA fines against SpaceX for safety violations along Florida's Space Coast.
That's wild that he was able to get the FAA, the head of the FAA, to resign, or he even was able to do this, and he did this publicly. And I mean, I feel like it's a conflict of interest if your company is directly being investigated for launching rockets and then the debris is hitting planes, putting people at risk for the inevitable what just happened to happen, and now you're firing people because you don't want regulations. This is deregulation. See, when Trump come in, he said he wanted deregulations. That's what he said. He said he wanted things to be deregulated, and this is what it looks like. This is what deregulation looks like.
For more, we're joined by David Sirota, editor-in-chief of The Lever, which has a new report headlined "Before D.C. Airport Collision, Lawmakers Brushed Off Warnings and Boosted Flights." Welcome back to Democracy Now!, David. You know, this story is so horrific. I know skating community well. My sister-in-law was almost in the Olympics as a skater, her mother a coach. Young ones who are training for ultimately to go into the Olympics, their families waiting at Reagan Airport.
Wow.
The American Airlines flight taking them back from Wichita training camp after the Nationals collides with an Army Black Hawk helicopter. They say it was a training flight. Can you talk about this piece that you wrote? Despite mid-flight near misses and dire pleas, airline expanded flight traffic at Washington's busy airport. David, I just watched the news briefing. There was the 2 Virginia senators who objected to this expansion, right? Tim Kaine, as well as Senator Warner. They didn't mention that this morning, but if you can talk all about it, give us some background.
Sure. So Washington National Airport is a relatively small airport and one of the busiest, if not the busiest airport in the country because of how close it is to the center of Washington, D.C., the city there. For years, there has been a debate about whether to expand the amount of flights that can go into Washington Reagan Airport. And over the course of decades, there has been a steady increase in the number of slots, that is to say, the amount of traffic at Washington National Airport, air traffic, And just a few months ago, as we reported in Congress, there's been a push by a set of airlines to expand those flights. There's some other airlines that don't want to expand those flights because they're already controlling those routes. So there's a sort of an economic battle going on, who gets to control what routes. But at the core of it, according to opponents of this, including the senators that you mentioned, there is a very deep safety concern at this airport, because there had been a series of near misses, near collisions at the airport because it is so heavily trafficked. So a few months ago, put into the FAA authorization bill was a language that further expanded these slots allowed to come into Washington National. Basically, this is the opponents argue this is Congress people from cities farther away from Washington want more direct flights into Washington because it's more convenient for them. That's the opponent's argument. But again, at the core is the safety question. There have been real safety concerns, again, about these near misses at this particular airport. And so a few months ago, that language was slipped into the FAA reauthorization bill, which further expanded the traffic. And it should be said, when it actually came up for a vote in the House in 2023, the House voted it down. So there were some legislative machinations here in which the proponents of this had to slip it into a larger bill, kind of stealthily, to get this expansion passed. And Tim Kaine said he was very lawmakers to not do this.
And could you talk, David Sirota, about the significance of the fact that the collision occurred with a Black Hawk helicopter?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, we don't know the exactly what happened and what is at issue here with an alleged training flight of helicopters. But I think it's worth saying this: if you've ever been near or flown into Washington National Airport, you can see it's some of the most heavily trafficked air. Farther out of the city, Dulles Airport. And so the argument has been, listen, we should not expand the amount of flights going into Washington Reagan, even though it's more convenient for passengers when you get off the plane because it's closer to the city, because we have a larger airport a little bit further away. So the argument was, again, this is members of Congress who want, for their convenience, were listening to their airline donors. They were listening to their desire for their own convenience, not listening to the multiple safety warnings about this airport.
And let's remember, it's called now Reagan National Airport, used to be National Airport, known for President Reagan. And President Reagan is known for breaking up the PATCO union, the air traffic controllers union, back in the 1980s.
That's wild.
Absolutely. And there's a question, there's been questions, and I don't know if it's germane to what happened in this disaster, but there have been questions about air traffic control resources, understaffing, the current staff being essentially overworked. All of these questions have been swirling for years. And so our job at The Lever, what we do is we look back at the decisions that were made in the lead up to situations like this. And again, these warnings about expanding the flight traffic at this airport came just a few months ago. I mean, if you go read our story, you will see legislators warning, really dire pleas to not expand the amount of traffic at this airport.
David Sirota, you are editor-in-chief of The Lever. You are following what's happening in Washington extremely closely. To say say the least. We're talking about everything, everywhere, all at once. With President Trump's inauguration and the number of executive orders, the number of hearings for his nominees to be in his cabinet. But you also have a massive amount of pushback. If you can talk about what just took place, the significance, and just your take over the last 10 days, but the significance of cutting trillions of dollars or so-called pausing them, putting them on hold, and then because of the outcry, again, this hurting people, veterans, this hurting families in need, heating, housing assistance, Meals on Wheels, Head Start. And suddenly, after the chaos of just a number of hours, the Trump administration almost says, sorry, only kidding.
Yeah, I mean,
well, they're not just kidding, because I know people who receive public assistance who said their benefits have been paused. They can't access those benefits. So they're still pausing some people's. Some people's they may not be, but they are still pausing some people's.
This is really unprecedented, and I say that having worked in the U.S. House Appropriations Committee back during and after 9/11. So I worked in the committees that dealt with the spending in this country, the budget in this country, and I have never seen. Back then I had, and following it since then, had never seen something this brazen. Now, to be clear, the fight over the spending issue has been something that has happened in the distant past. Richard Nixon tried to so-called impound, that's holding back money appropriated by Congress. He tried to do that in the 70s. Congress passed a very explicit law saying, no, you actually cannot do this. Ronald Reagan explored doing this. John Roberts, by the way, as we reported, sent a memo when he was working in the Reagan administration saying essentially the president does not have the power to unilaterally withhold spending authorized by Congress and enshrined in law.
Justice of the United States.
That's right. And John Roberts would, if this kind of thing comes to the court, the Supreme Court, John Roberts would be weighing in on this. Look, this is unprecedented. Donald Trump effectively tried to unilaterally repeal the federal government by fiat, and he was rejected essentially by the American people. He was rejected temporarily by a court. And what I would say is it is a warning about what is coming. Yeah. While the reversal happened very quickly because of the outcry, because of the mass chaos that it sowed, the chaos here is the goal. Chaos in service of Trump grabbing more power for himself. Yeah. If he was successful in this, and he will try it again, what he will essentially do is render the legislature powerless. He will essentially eliminate the authority of one of the branches of the U.S. government, the checks and balances, the most democratic branch. And the last thing I'll say here, Amy, which is really important, especially when it comes to spending, the reason the founders put the power of the purse in the power of the Congress, and specifically in the power of the House, is because the House and the Congress are the most small d democratic parts of the government, the parts of the government that are supposed to be most responsive to the people. So the president trying to take away that power of the purse is a direct assault on the founding principles that spending decisions are made by the most democratic parts of our government.
David Sirota, we want to thank you so much for being with us, editor-in-chief of The Lever.
Yeah, so that is absolutely wild. That he is really testing the American people, is what he's doing, and he's testing Congress as well. So let's move on to the next story here. I want to talk about what Trump is continuing to do, because remember, he signed almost 350 executive orders on the first day of his presidency. He was prepping for this for 4 years while he was campaigning, and if he did actually win, he would sign all these orders, and he did. Now, one of these is let's see here, this story right here from the Military Times, and it says the Pentagon agency halts MLK Day, Black History Month, and other celebrations. Now, it's so interesting because this, I think this is, I don't know who this is. This is the guy that is over the Department of Defense. I forgot his name. Hegseth. This is Hegseth, but it's so interesting that it says Pentagon agency halts MLK Day and Black History Month. This is a Black man right here taking the photo, and this right here is a Black veteran. It's wild that they sat here and took this photo. They must have recently took this photo. This is wild. It's trolling like a mug. This is trolling to the 10th power. They have a Black man taking a photo, and this is a Black veteran right here. That is crazy. So let's read the story. The Defense Department's intelligence agency has paused observances of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Pride Month, Holocaust Days of Remembrance, and other cultural or historical annual events in response to President Donald Trump's ban on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the federal workplace. The instructions were published Tuesday in a Defense Intelligence Agency memo obtained by the Associated Press and affect 11 annual events, including Black History Month, which begins Saturday, and National Hispanic Heritage Month. The memo's authenticity was confirmed by a U.S. official who said the pause was initiated by the DIA and appears not to be policy across the Defense Department. The official spoke on the condition of the anonymity to discuss sensitive matters. We're receiving questions across the workforce on the way forward, memo says. DIA will pause all activities and events related to agency special emphasis programs effective immediately and until further notice. It is also noted to a pause on special observances hosted throughout the year. While Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth were included, the memo said the change would not affect those national holidays. Now, here's the thing. Both Martin Luther King Jr. and Juneteenth are federal holidays. These have been passed by Congress. Because they're federal holidays, Trump can't just say we're not going to celebrate these, because he would be opening himself up for a lawsuit. Now, Black History Month is a little bit different because it's not an actual federal law that we have. It is observed, but it's not a federal law. You know how like we have International Women's Day, Friendships Day, Grandparents' Day. We have all these days that we try to observe and highlight certain people in our lives across the board, just on a macro level. The contents of the memo were first reported by independent journalist Ken Klipstein and posted to X. Federal agencies have struggled to interpret Trump's January 6th executive order ending DEI programs. This is so crazy. So Trump January 20 executive order ending DEI programs across the government have taken a broad approach due to a lack of clear guidance from the White House on how to comply. So this is a war on woke, a war on DEI, a war on Black people. And anybody else can fall under that, but really this is specifically attacking Black people. And I really do believe that part of the reason why it's an attack on Black people is because an overwhelming majority of Black people voted for Kamala Harris. Kamala, whatever her name is. So Hexa says, we're not joking around. Hexa said in an interview Wednesday with Fox News, there's no changing of names or softly manipulating something. DEI is gone. In response to a query of AP about the memo, the DIA said late Wednesday it is working with the Department of Defense to fully implement all executive orders and administrative guidance in a timely manner. That's just it, though. It's just one of those things where, it's a problem. It's a problem that Donald Trump is in office and he's making all these swift moves, causing all this chaos, all this mayhem. He's trying to see what he can get through, what we will miss, what we won't be able to pay attention to because there's so many other things, coming our way. But one thing we do know for sure is that what Trump is trying to do is this is Project 2025. That's the main focus that we need to stay focused on. What Trump is doing is Project 2025, and he aims to transform the entire federal government, gut the Constitution. He wants to take out the checks and balances, and he wants to make sure that him and his ilk take over the U.S. government. And any other president, let's say he doesn't win, or let's say they're trying to get him in office for a third term, and I don't think they're joking around because people are making light of it. But he's not. I don't think he's playing. But I think that this is an attack on Black people because we voted for Kamala Harris. I also think that he just doesn't like Black people because he thinks we're beneath him. Also, there's been a long history of him not liking Black people, doing weird things to Black people. And this is nothing new. He's in office. To me, in my opinion, this is January 6th 2.0, except for the Donald Trump is the head person. The Proud Boys leader that organized the rally or whatever that was before, that's no longer the leader. Trump is the leader. He's always been the leader. But at the end of the day, this is January 6th 2.0, and their plan is Project 2025. And that plan entails a detailed plan. Now, if you read that plan, some of that plan, it states in there that they held back some of that plan because they didn't want to publish it. There's 4 parts, 4 pillars is what they call it, to the plan. One of those pillars, one of those parts, they did not release it. One is a 922-page document. The other one is a list of different people that can apply to get into these positions that he's firing everybody from. And then the other one, I forgot what the third pillar was, but there were 3, let me see, 4 pillars. They always use these weird words as if they're benign, but this is a malevolent project. It's a malevolent, it's meaning it's an evil, a malignant. This is the finance bros, the tech bros, the crypto bros. That's what they do. Is they take over. They do hostile takeovers. That's what they do. That's what they do. And it's so interesting that the Democrats are so quiet about all of this. I mean, you might hear something, here and there, or a tweet. But for the most part, the Democrats have not said anything. Now, I'm not a Democrat, but typically that's the opposition. They are saying nothing. But, a lot of Democrats are actually conservatives. A lot of Democrats are also bought by the same people that donated to Donald Trump's campaign. So I think that's probably why they're not saying anything. So let's see, what was but I can't find it. But at the end of the day, there was 4 pillars to it. One is the hiring the staff. One is that 922-page document. One of those they will not release because they said it's basically it's a comprehensive play-by-play of what it is. But that other document, that 922, it is basically a high-level overview of, I could just imagine what the actual document looks like. All right, so let's go over, because I'm looking for how come, okay, my thoughts about this is that if Trump is stopping Martin Luther King Day, Black History Month, he's like basically saying that he wants no type of federal funding or assistance or any jobs, legitimate jobs, to go to anybody Black. That's like the number one thing. He doesn't want that to happen. So if he doesn't want that to happen, why don't we hear from the NAACP? Why are we not hearing from the Congressional Black Caucus? Why aren't we hearing from activists that are speaking out, that are responding? How come I'm looking up this kind of stuff and I don't see nobody? Why is everybody just acting like nothing is going on? And then also, when I do look it up, mostly Black people are talking about, you know, this case that they've been following with Sean Combs and Sean Carter, which, okay, but this also is important. I don't know why we can't get people on this. It's so interesting to me. This is a direct attack on our community as a whole. I don't know, but I'm gonna keep speaking because this is weird. This is weird that nobody's saying anything, or they are real. They're kind of complacent with it or accepting of it, saying, "Well, we don't need DEI. It's not about us needing DEI. This is a direct attack on Black people. That's what it's about. Like, how are you willingly missing the point?" I've seen some videos today talking about we don't need. It's not about needing DEI. And who are you to tell somebody else that they shouldn't want a government job? Everybody, I told you, the federal government was one of the largest employers of Black people. A lot of Black people worked at the federal government in different capacities. I myself worked there in a specific capacity. It's, if you ain't got no background or anything like that, the pay is decent, the benefits are okay, and it's a pretty fairly simple job. They don't really give you super difficult jobs unless you have a degree to get into those super difficult jobs. So I don't hear the NAACP coming out. Let me see if there's anything recently as of because it's so weird. Whoa, are you kidding me? Hold up, y'all. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's take a look at this real quick. Okay. It says here, are you serious? The NAACP president condemns Trump administration's rollback of DEI programs. So this is him. And in a flurry of executive orders enacted on President Trump's first day in office, the controversial administration has chosen to roll back all federal programs promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. The move represents a significant regression from the previous administration's approach to centering racial equality and remedying the systemic racism deeply entrenched in our nation's governing practices. And we can't have that now, can we? We can't actually move the country forward. No. So the NAACP President Derek Johnson released the following statement condemning President Trump's executive order rolling back DEI in the federal government. It is outrageous that the president is rolling back critical diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. DEI programs help ensure that everyone can prosper. It's clear that President Trump does not value equal opportunity. His appalling executive order will only worsen America's racial hierarchy and benefit the oligarch class. This executive order threatens public services that benefit all Americans in an attempt to consolidate power and money to a few wealthy individuals, and poor and working class people will pay the price. This is all a part of a calculated strategy to redefine the role of government, privatize essential public services, and further discrimination. Elections have consequences, and it's clear that this election has put a target on Black America's back. Okay, thank you. Oh my gosh. But here's the thing, this is just on the website. There isn't any really vocal activism. There needs, like, how come there isn't any legal action? Come on. The data makes it clear organizations with diverse workforces have a strategic advantage over those who don't. According to McKinsey, companies in the top quartile for being ethnically and culturally diverse are 36% more profitable than those in the bottom quartile. And look, you can also prove the point. The minute that Donald Trump said that you do not have to participate in DEI, so many companies were like, oh, well, we ain't got to do it, then screw it. We're going to discontinue all these Black products. Look at Target. We're not going to advertise anything Black anymore. Look at Walmart. There are so many companies that are saying, oh, well, we don't have to do it. We're not being made to do it. We're not being forced to do it, which they shouldn't be forced to do it. But at the end of the day, when you are not, if there's no incentive for you to do it, or there's no call for you to do it, you want there to be no part, you don't want any part of DEI or diversity, equity, and include Black people. You want no part of Black people. I really stand with Tabitha Brown with the boycott, because absolutely not. All right, so there's that. And so let's look at this other article on the NAACP, if we can view it. NAACP reacts to news of President-elect Donald Trump's win in the 2024 presidential election. So this is obviously before he actually got sworn in. This is a statement from the president. Millions of Americans cast their ballots in one of the most consequential elections of our time, from congressional seats to judicial appointments and ballot propositions. America decided. No matter who occupies the Oval Office, our mission remains clear. For over a century, the NAACP has and will continue to champion justice and equity. We are determined to protect and uplift Black and underserved communities. Okay, so this election cycle, we made a historic $20 million investment in the effort to get out of the vote, in efforts to get out the vote to mobilize over 14 million Black voters. We're not stopping there. Our resolve. So did they donate this to Donald Trump's PAC? Because it says that this election cycle, we made a historic $20 million investment in efforts to get out the vote and mobilize over 14.5 million Black voters. We're not stopping there. Our resolve remains stronger than ever as we advocate for policies that dismantle systemic injustices and support the American dream. This new chapter presents an opportunity to chart a course that unites Americans through integrity. Okay, so since they're talking about the president-elect, so they donated $20 million to Donald Trump? Hold on. What the hell? Are you kidding me? So I think they gave Donald Trump $20 million for this election cycle because they're talking about the president-elect. So it does also say that the president did say that he, after his, back in May of 2024, that he was unfit to represent American democracy. And there was the NAACP called for the impeachment of the president. Yeah, but this is the first time. Well, you know, when he did get the Democrats put passed the impeachment and the Republicans struck it down. So the NAACP actually has been. They called for his impeachment. They said that he wasn't fit to lead, and so he's been going through it with them, and he clearly got the memo that he is not on the side of this particular organization. But see, here's the thing. They're very, to me, they just seem very quiet. I don't understand why there isn't more. We're not hearing anything about, even from their own news media, about everybody else is filing lawsuits or getting a legal team together, because everybody's going to have to fight this legally through the courts. Like, what are we doing? I don't see it. I just see posts. Like, come on. Y'all have resources. Y'all have a lot at y'all disposal. Disposal. Sorry. But at the end of the day, we need to be gearing up a legal defense, and our evidence is all this stuff that he's talking about, all here online. We don't need to be sitting here just consuming this content. We need to be this needs to be gathered as evidence, because we all need to be gearing up towards a legal defense against this president. He is literally fighting against each and every faction of the proletariat, and we need to respond legally. I wanted to go over some of the lawsuits that he's currently in, so let's take a look. Okay. Let me. All right. So this one is from a couple days ago, January 28th. So this is from the New Republic. Trump hit with a new lawsuit for funneling sensitive information to Elon Musk. It says here, Donald Trump's administration has been hit with a lawsuit over allegedly collecting federal employee information and directing it to an employee of Elon Musk. The lawsuit, filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia Monday, alleges that employee data is going to Amanda Scales, who, according to LinkedIn, works for XAI, a private corporation of which Musk is the CEO. This would violate federal laws on transparency and put the sensitive information of federal employees into the hands of a private corporation. That's wild. But these are black people, so he don't care because it's black folk. So a new lawsuit alleges Trump admin is steering info on federal employees to person who works for Musk, not the government. The lawsuit states that Trump administration officials created an email address, hr@opm-gov, and directed federal employees through the Office of Personnel Management to treat it as legitimate. OPM is the agency tasked with managing the federal workforce and could be described as human resources for federal employees. A Reddit post r/Fed News, a subreddit dedicated to the federal workforce, alleged on Monday that the address is based at an email server that was recently set up at the OPM offices. The post was later deleted, but a copy of its contents were cited in the lawsuit. That's what's up. How you just gonna give federal employees information to a private company and there was no consent to do so? But again, he's giving it to them because they're black people. And again, I told you, this is stuff. Now, this letter also needs to be flipped for if your information was leaked, because it went to all 2.6 or 2.8 million workers or employees of the federal government. Every single federal worker got that email. So that is open up to a lawsuit because they sent that email to everybody. The email was talking about them quitting the job. This went out. This went viral. How this letter went out so that they asked them, oh, well, if you quit now, you get 8 months worth of severance pay. And then the argument was, well, Congress never approved that. So how you know that's going to be 8 months worth of severance pay? You quit, and then now you just SLL, and they don't care because they want you going anyway. So yeah, this is wild. So this lawsuit is happening. The fact that he is passing on sensitive information, leaking sensitive information, the president. But see, remember when he had that private information at Mar-a-Lago, the top secret documents, remember that? And then he had a secret counsel that had to look into it to see, what was this all about? In my opinion, I think that him and Putin have some kind of thing going on, some type of understanding. This is the second lawsuit. States and nonprofits suing Trump over catastrophic pause in federal funding, immediate nationwide harm. So coalitions of Democratic state attorney general and nonprofits announced lawsuit against President Donald Trump administration Tuesday over its guidance temporarily pausing all the federal assistance. The first, let's take this off. The first, let me see. The first in what's expected to be a series of lawsuits taking aim at the guidance as legal experts argue it's unlawful. Straight up. Like, he's breaking the Constitution in so many different ways. Some of this stuff that he's rolling back that are not necessarily law is still rooted in the Constitution. The reason why this country is a country is because of the Constitution. Listen, before this country was made an actual country, they had 8 congressional presidents. That means they had 8 different presidents that served 1 to 3 years. And what each president did is they wrote a piece of the Constitution. And once this Constitution got done, this is when the very first president, meaning George Washington, was the first president of the United States after the Constitution was signed. And once they did the ceremony and christened it and made it a country, made it an official country, George Washington was the first president of the country. But before that, there were 8 congressional presidents that wrote the Constitution. Without the Constitution, no other country would recognize you as a country, a legitimate country, especially Europe, because right at that time, that's where they had all come from, was Europe. So the fact that he's going against the very document that made us a country is telling right then and there. So it's like, well, what are you trying to do? But what we know is he's trying to kind of like carve out parts of the Constitution that he feels that he can get away with, and then put in his own ways of thinking, his own ways of being, him and his cronies. They want to make this some sort of like a hollowed out government where it's almost like a Hitler type of thing. That's really what they salivate over. All right, so the National Council of Nonprofit Organizations sued the Office of Management and Budget and its acting director, Matthew Vaith, Tuesday in federal court after Vaith issued guidance Monday evening directing federal agencies to stop dispersing federal grant and loan money starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Democratic Attorney General in New York, California, New Jersey, Illinois, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island then announced that they will file a lawsuit later, taking aim at the policy and seeking a court order to immediately stop it, with New York Attorney Letitia James saying the order is dangerous and reckless, illegal and unconstitutional. Yes. So the funding pause is so agencies can review whether the funding is consistent with Trump's policies, not America's policies. They said, and is expected to affect most government funding, other than individual assistance like Social Security and Medicare payments. The nonprofits say the guidance should be overturned because it violates the Administrative Procedure Act, arguing it is arbitrary and capricious, exceeds the agency's authority, and is contrary to the First Amendment. Listen, the money that Trump froze, Congress already passed it. Trump cannot actually legally stop the money from being spent because Congress already voted. That's why there's so many members of Congress. Congress already voted. The members of Washington, D.C. that's the Congress for the federal government. And then you have your state governments. Washington, D.C. already voted that all this money was going to go to wherever it was going to go. You can't then come in and say, oh, well, screw that. I'm going to just write an executive order and change it up. That's not how it works. It's like he never was president before or something. Listen, in school, we all learn what the pathway to government is. We know what the order of operation is, right? And if these funds were already earmarked by Congress and signed into law, voted on all the members, you can't just come back because you take office and then undo that. All right, so here's the last one here. This one says 6 activity duty service members file first lawsuit challenging Trump's transgender troop plan. Transgender troop ban. Don't say that 3 times fast, okay? Trump's I can't do it. But 6 transgender active duty service members and 2 former service members who seek re-enlistment on Tuesday filed the first lawsuit challenging President Donald Trump's executive order that calls for revising policy on transgender troops and probably sets the stage for banning them in the armed forces. Trump's order, signed Monday, claims the sexual identity of transgender service members conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle and is harmful to military readiness. It requires Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to issue a revised policy. So transgender people, like, in my opinion, like the military, they incentivize you if you get married. They incentivize you if you have family that also, are part of the military, right? So you get money to go to school, you get money to learn trades, stuff like that. So other stuff, medical, I don't know about the VA, but ultimately you do get incentives for having a family. So transgender people, what if their family isn't what you think it should look like? So then does that mean that they shouldn't get the same benefits because the family isn't what you think it should look like? I don't know. I think that if you're going to be a federal government, you really can't micromanage people's families. You have to leave some room for people to be who they are. Even if you don't agree with it, that's fine. But if you're going to be a government, some things you can't micromanage. You just can't. There's nothing about being transgender that makes me better or worse than any other soldier I serve alongside. We are all here because we are committed to our country, and we are passionate, willing, and able to serve effectively. 6 plaintiffs include a Sailor of the Year honoree, a Bronze Star recipient, and several who are awarded meritorious service medals. I spent more than half my life in the Army, including combat in Afghanistan, which is a war we lost, said Army Sergeant First Class Kate Cole. Removing qualified transgender soldiers like me means an exodus of experienced personnel. Look, Donald Trump is dismantling this government as fast as he can, and he's trying to reassemble it with an army of men that do that Roman salute that his old pal did. That's what he's trying to do. Grab an army of Roman saluters so that he can usher in maybe his third or fourth or fifth presidency. That's really what this is all about. And the only thing stopping him is for us to sit here and just watch it go by, just watch it happen. You know, in the past 2 weeks, there's been so much going on, and a lot of us kind of just are stunned, shocked, and kind of numb to what's been happening. But we can't do that. We have to collect the evidence so that we can use it for a legal defense. Really, that's the plan. We cannot sit here and just watch. We have to take notes, and we have to be vocal about not wanting some of these things to happen. The last thing I wanted to show was this here about the migrant crisis, or the migrant. So it was the migrant crisis when Joe Biden was in office, and now it's the deportation crisis because neither one of them are managing this migrant issue the way that they should. Yeah, I mean, let's look at this. Let's take a look.
To build a new detention facility at Guantanamo Bay, capable of holding up 30,000 illegal migrants. He says the military jail located in Cuba would, in his words, detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Well, Sarah Smith is live in Washington for us now. Sarah.
Yeah, events move at breakneck speed in Donald Trump's Washington. As well as that surprise announcement about Guantanamo Bay, we've seen his controversial choice for Health Secretary, Robert Kennedy Jr., being quizzed by senators, and President Trump signed his first piece of legislation, a bill that means any illegal immigrants accused of crimes must be deported. Immigration rates have been visibly stepped up across America since Donald Trump's return to power. Soon there will be so many people in detention, there's not space to house them all. That's where Guantanamo Bay comes in. It was a notorious prison housing terrorist suspects with numerous allegations of abuse, even torture. Now it's in a space that President Trump says illegal immigrants arrested in America will be sent.
We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back. So we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, right? And tough. That's a tough place to get out of.
Other detainees have already been deported on military planes back to Brazil and Colombia. Every aspect of American government is being radically reshaped by Mr. Trump's agenda. From freezing spending to appointing controversial cabinet members. Robert Kennedy Jr. brings a lot of controversial baggage with him to this hearing, including his vaccine skepticism. He was asked about his baseless claims that vaccines can cause autism or that there are no safe and effective vaccines. It is a medical condition in his throat that gives Mr. Kennedy this very distinctive voice.
We need to move on.
I support the measles vaccine. I support the polio vaccine. I will do nothing as HHS secretary that makes it difficult or discourages people from taking either of the
Anybody
vaccines.
who believes that ought to look at the measles book you wrote saying parents have been misled into believing that measles is a deadly disease. That's not true.
Reservations about Robert Kennedy Jr. go beyond just vaccines. Many Republicans are worried about his staunch support for abortion rights or his battle against food additives and ultra-processed food. His cousin, Caroline Kennedy, daughter of President John F. Kennedy, has gone public on why she believes he's not fit for office.
It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator. His basement, his garage, his dorm room were always the center of the action, where drugs were available, and he enjoyed showing off how he put baby chickens and mice in a blender to feed to his
Oh my
hogs.
God.
It was often a perverse scene of despair and violence.
The BBC
let him go wild on health. I'm going to let him go wild on the food. I'm going to let him go wild on medicine.
Before he joined Donald Trump, Bobby Kennedy was running to win the Democratic Party presidential nomination. He's not really on the left or the right of American politics, which means there are people who oppose his nomination right across the political spectrum. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Washington.
Wow. That is crazy. But this is the other video I wanted to show you guys. Hey, that girl on the end, you could tell she's a low. That girl on the end, you can tell she's a low-key Trump supporter. Anyway, so that has been the end of the broadcast for today. I just wanted to kind of bring that up, all those points, because they are important, and we need to follow this, and we need to get all of this information documented so that we can, make sure that we also have a legal defense, because that's really the only recourse that we have. And then also banding together to make it a vocal thing that we don't want these things to be happening to people in our country. Me personally, I'm not really a fan of the way that the deportations are happening. I feel like we are also being targeted. So I don't want any of us to be targeted. If you have a problem, if you have a gripe with any particular group, I think it should be handled professionally. I don't like the way that legal or illegal, I don't like the way other human beings are being treated in this country. So that's been the end of the broadcast. So thank you for joining me, and you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be back on here tomorrow. All right, bye.